When I was 16 years old, I decided that I was going to do something for the summer that was going to change my life, or at least I thought it was going to change my life. And so I went to my parents and I told them that I wanted to go to engineering camp, because I was sure as a 16-year-old Indian guy that being in engineering camp was going to prepare me for the career I was destined for. And so I found out about this amazing program called the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology summer program. And the Rose-Hulman Institute for Technology is a university, an all-boy university in Illinois. And I tried to get into the program. I filled out the application. It was basically like applying to college. And I filled it out. I waited for a couple months, and I found out that I got in. And I was going to go and be away from my parents for the first time, which was in itself pretty cool. And so I went to this engineering camp, and the first thing that they did after they welcomed us is they split us up into teams. And the whole format of the camp was that you would work for 3 or 4 weeks with your team to build a project, and at the end, you would get your project judged, and the best projects would win. And so they put me in a team with 3 other boys, because it was all boys, and we had our first team meeting, and we were building some sort of wind turbine thing. Now, the fact that I call it a wind turbine thing should give you a clue as to how useful I was about to be for my team, which is to say, not very useful. So the team, being 16-year-old boys, realized pretty quickly that I was not going to be a lot of use for them. And they pretty rapidly, to their credit, said, we'll handle it from here. We don't really need your help. You can take a break. You can do whatever you want to do. So I found myself, after the first day of this summer program, with a lot of free time, and a team that was basically going off and doing technical stuff that I didn't really get. So I thought, well, okay, now I got to do something else. So I started talking to other boys in the program, and I started putting together events during our free time. And I was the only person who wasn't really focused on their group work, so what I ended up doing was helping other boys to get to know each other. I ended up knowing all of the boys in all of the different programs. So the end of this program comes around. A couple weeks later, we present all of the projects. Our team, very embarrassing for me, but our team stands up, and I got to stand up with them and pretend like I did something, when actually I did nothing. And we present our project, and we get some sort of honorable mention and some other amazing project wins. And then they say, we've got a couple of other awards that we're going to give out. And one of those other awards was an individual award, and they called it a Good Citizen Award. And a Good Citizen Award was basically your peer-nominated award for somebody who they felt was just a really good guy. And so I got nominated for that, and because I was the only person who didn't really have a project, I was the only guy that everybody kind of knew, and so I was the only guy that got the votes, and I won. So I won the Good Citizen Award, and I was really proud of that, and I came back from this summer program, and I told my parents, you know, we didn't win the thing, but I got the Good Citizen Award. And it was only years later that I thought about that, and I realized that I went to a 16-year-old all-boy camp, and I won Miss Congeniality. So that was my first clue that maybe engineering wasn't really what I was destined to do. But it was also my first clue that something other than having the best project might actually be a useful skill in life. And as you start to think about how we think useful things exist and how we think great things happen, we focus a lot on the big idea, right? How often do we talk about and celebrate the people who have these ideas? We celebrate genius. We try and create geniuses. We have science fairs. We have festivals to try and capture this big idea because it's all about the idea. This is a great cover image of a fictional book created by Wired magazine that said all you need to have a big idea is a book to talk about the big idea. And so they had a big idea generator. And what they would do is you would choose a word and you would add a suffix like onomics to the end of it, and therefore it would be a big word. So clearly I didn't get the memo because I published a book that said onomics at the end, but it follows the formula, right? The fictional formula to be a best-selling book. That's how we capture big ideas. But if big ideas are the thing, then why doesn't every big idea work? This is a QWERTY keyboard. They're designed for keyboard that pretty much all of us use. It was created in the early 1900s, And what you probably don't know about the QWERTY keyboard is that it was created with a very specific goal in mind. And that specific goal was to make you type slower, to slow you down. Because the problem in the time when the QWERTY keyboard was invented was if you type too fast, these typewriter keys would stick together. And so the QWERTY keyboard put the most commonly used letters further apart. It forced you to use your pinkies, which was not optimized. So in 1932, a professor named August Dvorak comes along and says, well, this is not optimal, right? Now we have computers, we have faster machines, this whole typewriter sticking thing, that's not really a problem anymore. So he goes out and he gets a grant from the Carnegie Foundation, and he creates the Dvorak keyboard. And with the Dvorak keyboard, you can type the 120 most commonly used words in the English language with just that middle bar. Highly, highly optimized. He goes out and gets a woman named Barbara Blackburn to learn the Dvorak keyboard, and she sets the Guinness Book of World Record for fastest typing at 212 words per minute. Highly, highly optimized. Far superior. Now raise your hand if you use a Dvorak keyboard today. Okay, 2 people, so in this whole crowd, okay? So you guys are highly optimized, right? Do you type 212 words per minute?
I don't think so.
You haven't measured? Okay. Why didn't an amazing idea work, right? If it's all about the idea, why doesn't every amazing idea work? Why doesn't every optimized product succeed? Well, maybe it's a feature problem, right? If we just talk about the features more, we'll convince people, right? Here's some examples of how we often talk about the features of the products that we sell, right? They're interoperable, they're competitive price, they're small footprints. How many of these terms do we see over and over and over again? The problem is, though, that we're being very precise when actually what we need to do is tell people something that's actually meaningful, right? Precision on its own doesn't deliver the message, and people don't get it. And they don't decide based on that anyway. The other problem is that we're telling people things that are clearly not true. And this is where the marketing perception problem comes in. So Cocoa Krispies, according to this box, will boost your immunity. So it's okay to feed to your kids because it'll boost their immunity. It's all good. And in case that wasn't convincing enough, it's all natural. Now, I've traveled to a lot of countries. I have never seen a Cocoa Krispie plant. But maybe there is one somewhere and nobody knows about it. That's possible, right? So we assume that people are stupid, right? We think that they won't get what we're trying to do, right? These are not donut seeds, they're Cheerios, right? But if we just repackage it, maybe people will think that it's something different, right? And what this leads us towards is this decline in trust, right? People just don't trust that institutions and organizations are telling them the truth. This is a survey from 2011. Year after year, trust in every type of organization goes down. And this is the climate that we are all living in, this low trust climate. Now, capitalism might be to blame, right? People blame business. They say, well, business is corrupting us. Capitalism is the problem. We see movements started around this to try and pin the blame on something, right? Because we all need somebody to blame, something to blame. Maybe it's government. Right? I mean, there's so many millionaires in government, right? Percentage of Americans who are millionaires, percentage of Congress. There's a mismatch that people see. And they're fed up. Voter turnout goes down year after year. And the challenge here is, if you look at voter turnout in a non-presidential election, it's less than 50%. Now, does that mean that less than 50% of people in America who are eligible to vote care or have any beliefs at all? No. Those people have beliefs. But for some reason, their belief isn't enough to get them to show up to vote. There's a gap between belief and action. Belief alone doesn't get someone to show up and vote. Because they say they believe something, but they don't donate. They don't actually turn up. They don't take the action that we need them to take. So where's this gap coming from? Why is it here? And how do we bridge it? The problem is that right now we're living through what I call the modern believability crisis. And what that means is that people are less likely to trust your organization and what you have to say, or you as a person and what you have to say, than ever before. Because we have to be. We see so many messages out there that tell us that they're going to solve every problem for us. Miracle cures, right, for everything that you can imagine. And so we put our guard up. We see all of these messages and we say, okay, we're just going to default, not believe anything, because we don't really have a better way of figuring it out. Now, there's a few people who manage to transcend this. And so I think we can learn a lot by looking at what they've done and why they've done it. Oprah is a great example. In November of 1986, Oprah was doing one of her first shows. She'd only been a host for a couple of months. And she had the impossible time slot of being up against Phil Donahue, which, if you remember, he was just dominant in his day. And they gave her that time slot because they figured, well, we're not going to win it anyway. So why not just give it to a former beauty queen, no expectations, no big deal. She gets on stage in front of a live studio audience, and she does a show that month on child abuse. And during that show, she admits to her live studio audience and the televised audience that she herself was abused as a child. Now, this was not done in 1986. There was no Twitter in 1986. Right? Celebrities didn't talk about their personal lives unless they had to. Otherwise, it was private. But here was a celebrity proactively saying, you know what? I had to deal with this, and here's what I did, and I think that by admitting it for myself, I'll help people. And throughout her career, over and over again, she did the same thing. She talked about why she didn't have kids. She talked about why she didn't get married. She talked about her weight. All of those things, very public, very truthful. Because she shared that truth, she built up such a loyal audience that now we have an entire effect, a behavioral effect named after her, the Oprah effect. The Oprah effect says, if Oprah says, go and read this book, millions of people go out the next day and they buy the book. If Oprah says, check out this product, people check out the product. If Oprah says, go and vote for Obama in 2008, millions of people go and vote for Obama. That's the power that she has because she built it over time. There's another guy named Scott DJ Moreno who has an amazing story that a lot of people haven't heard. And I was talking to Scott about a moment in 1993 when he took over a team of American Express financial advisors. And this team was rated, because they rated all of their regions across the country, was rated 173rd out of 176 regions. So clearly, not a good reputation. He comes in, cleans house, changes the way they do business, and within 1 year, he turns it around and they're number one. Now, that alone is pretty impressive, to do that in 1 year. But if you get a couple of big clients, if you get the right people in that door, getting to number one time is probably not unbelievably hard. But for 13 out of the next 15 years, they stay number one. So now there's something happening here. There's something that people start to get interested in. American Express starts to get interested. They send in a team of consultants to figure out, what's this guy doing? What's he doing right? How can we recreate this? And what they find is something that they just don't believe, which is it's not based on the people that he hired. He doesn't have inherently more talented people. It's not based on the region and the fact that he has more people there. It's based on the fact that he's able to inspire people. He inspires them through video, and they care more, and so they work harder. And that's a very powerful thing that only he's able to do. Nelson Mandela, again, same effect. He invites people over to tea. It was memorialized in this movie, Invictus, but it's a real moment where he brings people together. He gets them on his side by having a personal one-to-one interaction. James Wolfensohn, same story. He goes into the World Bank president in 1995. 1998, he tells the country directors, who are all based in the US, that they have to move to the countries, which was never before done at the World Bank. All of those country directors moved to the countries. 71% of them, by the time he retires in 2005, are based in the countries. The World Bank has a hugely better reputation in the countries that they serve because the people are there. David Heyman is a producer who bought the rights to Harry Potter. The story of how he found the actor to play Harry Potter, again, is the same thing. They auditioned for 7 months to try and find the actor that's going to play Harry Potter. They find Daniel Radcliffe. He becomes the actor because he sees him in a theater, and he says, that's him. He sees something in his eyes, and he says, that's him. No audition, no resume, no nothing. Doug Ullman, CEO of Livestrong, meets Lance Armstrong. They're both cancer survivors. He becomes CEO, 2007, of Livestrong at the age of 29. Again, no qualifications necessarily, but he's the right person for the job because of his passion, and he has a connection. Tim Ferriss launches a best-selling book, 4-Hour Workweek, based on relationships that he builds with bloggers. And Chita Malik and Tony Page are two NFL agents who represent a guy named Cecil Newton, who has a brother named Cam Newton, who wins the Heisman Trophy. And because of their relationship with the brother, they get an interview to become Cam Newton's agents. They become his agent. He goes #1 in the NFL draft in 2011. $20 million contract. They land him as a client through the personal relationship. And Zappos sold for $102 billion because of culture, right? They didn't sell a product that Amazon needed. So what's going on here, right? Avis is a great example to pull this together, because what they did was they admitted in their strategy that they didn't have to be #1, they just had to try harder. Because if they had the personal connection, you would come back. And you would keep coming back, and you would talk about it. What these all point to is this very fundamental fact, which is that we do business and build relationships with the people we like and the people we have personal connections with. And what they sell and the message isn't as important as the messenger delivering that message. And over again, whether you look at the World Bank or Harry Potter or the NFL agents, you see this effect. Harvard looked at this, a team of Harvard researchers, and they decided that they were going to do a survey to try and figure out whether this was a real thing. And they bridged likability and competence and measured people on both metrics. And they came up with 4 categories. And they said there's a competent jerk, a lovable fool, an incompetent jerk, and a lovable star. Everybody wants the star, nobody wants the jerk. What about the other 2? Which one would you pick? What they found from that survey was more people wanted the lovable fool, the person who they had the personal connection with. Because personal connection, in those cases, trumped competence. They'd rather work with someone who they had the personal connection with. They'd figure out the project afterwards. That's what happened in real life, right? So what it essentially tells us is that in this world where we have what surveys call an engagement gap, this idea that people are not trying as hard as they could, right? In any company, there's only 21% who are engaged, who try as hard as they can. Everybody else, they're sort of doing what they need to do. How do you get that next group to do what they need to do? And that's what the likability gap is. It's the difference between what someone has to do and what they could do. And the way to get them from this place to that place is based on the personal connection, the likability. That's why people try harder. That's why they tried harder for Scott. That's why Tim Ferriss launched a best-selling book. That's why the effect happens. So what I'll leave you with is this challenge, that in your daily roles, instead of focusing on the big idea and trying to be the genius in the room, try and build the most personal connections. Because if you can do that, you can go from being good to being great. Thank you.